She wore silk for someone who wasn't me. The first time I noticed the silk, it wasn't on her body. It was in our laundry basket, a pale river folded in on itself like a secret. Claire never wore silk. She said it wrinkled too easily and held on to perfume like a jealous memory. I pinched the hem between my fingers. It was light enough to be a whisper, cool, slick, and cut in a way that meant it wasn't meant for sleep. We'd been married 5 years. We were good at sharing a kitchen without talking, at finding the same joke inside different days. Lately, though, there were pauses with corners in them. I blamed the economy, the renovation upstairs, the way the city made you carry two versions of yourself everywhere you went, one for the street, one for the mirror. That night, she came home late from a gallery opening she'd been curating for months. "Small miracles, big egos," she said, dropping her bag on the chair and kissing me with the distracted accuracy of someone who knows a map by touch. Grapefruit and a darker note, amber maybe, settled against my shirt. "How was it?" I asked, plating pasta I'd oversalted in her absence. "Triumph," she said, pulling off her earrings. Her neck caught the kitchen light like an answer I wasn't smart enough to phrase. People actually cried in front of a sculpture, real tears. I felt like a priest handing out absolutions. "And the dress?" I asked. It took effort to keep my tone casual. She smiled without looking at me. "A loner," she said. "Silk, bad idea in a room with red wine. I survived." "Where is it?" "Back with the stylist," she said, opening a bottle of water like it owed her money. "Why?" I stirred the pasta that didn't need stirring, felt ridiculous, and let it go. You learn to choose your questions in a marriage the way you learn to choose shoes in the rain. 2 days later, I recognized the silk again. Not the same piece. This one was black, cut deeper at the back, thin straps like deliberate mistakes. It hung at the end of the closet, a gentle shadow between my jackets. Claire had taken a shower and left the bathroom door open. Steam and citrus curled into the bedroom. She stepped out with a towel knotted above her chest and stood in front of the closet with her head tipped, as if she were listening to someone in the next room. "You going out?" I asked. She glanced at me, surprised, like she'd forgotten I was the kind of furniture that asked questions. "Dinner," she said. "A late thank you with Santiago and the board. You could come, but you would hate it." Santiago, the gallery's patron, newly divorced, a man with teeth like decisions, and a laugh that sounded like it paid taxes for other people. I'd met him twice. He made me feel like a coat he wasn't sure he would ever wear again. "You're right," I said and meant it. She reached for the black silk. I watched her mouth soften in the mirror when she slipped it on, as if the fabric knew a password I didn't. She chose a pair of small pearl earrings I'd bought on a day I was trying to buy a future. When she came close to tie my tie, an old ritual before events, I felt the shock of cool silk at my forearm, a temperature that didn't belong to our apartment. "You'll text if you're late?" I asked, and heard the need in my voice like a bruise you notice after the game. "Of course," she said, and kissed the corner of my mouth on purpose. "Don't wait up." I waited up. I tried not to do the thing you do when you're afraid, which is to script other people's nights in your head. The drink poured too generously, the way a hand on a chair becomes a hand on a back without anyone noticing. I watched a dumb movie with the sound off and the captions on and pretended to read. Midnight folded itself into one. At 1:13 a text, "Still at dinner, I'm sorry. Charity people don't believe in watches. Don't wait up, really." It was the really that did me in. I slept badly and woke to an empty pillow that still smelled like citrus and laundry soap. When she came back, the sun was up and she had that glossy fatigue that looks good on magazine people and bad on the rest of us. She slid into bed behind me, tucked her knees into the back of mine, pressed her mouth to the nape of my neck, and breathed in like she'd found a window. "I missed you," she said into my skin. I wanted to believe her. The thing with suspicion is that it trains you to become a scholar of small artifacts. A week later, Claire left for a site visit on the coast with her assistant. I found a receipt in the pocket of a coat she rarely wore. Nothing dramatic, just a meticulous little slip from a hotel bar I'd never heard of. 2 glasses of something that cost too much. A time stamp that contradicted the meeting she'd insisted ran long at the museum. It's always that small, stupid thing. Proof that could be a coincidence until it is. I made a choice I would have judged a younger version of myself for. I searched her bag. Not much: lipstick, phone charger, a notebook full of beautiful little drawings of other people's rooms. At the bottom, a paper matchbook with the name of the hotel printed in clean white letters, the Orpheum. A number handwritten inside, 708. Fear is a bad detective. It observes everything and concludes nothing. I put the matchbook back and closed the bag like it contained a beating heart I had no right to touch. When Claire left for her site visit, the apartment felt staged, like we were all just pretending to live there. Rain sharpened the afternoon. I decided to go to the Orpheum, not because I thought I'd find her, but because I needed to walk into the story I was telling myself and see if the furniture was real. The Orpheum was one of those hotels that had decided to resist age by leaning into it. Brass details, velvet in names, mirrors that forgave you nothing. I asked the front desk if Claire was staying there, using my best impression of a husband trying not to be a jealous cliché. "We can't give out guest information," the woman said with the kind kindness they teach in staff meetings. "Of course," I said. "Is the bar open?" It was. It smelled like oranges and old money. I sat where I could see the elevator bank reflected in the long mirror behind the bottles. People came and went in wet coats. My drink fell an inch down the glass and stayed there. That's when I saw her. Not Claire. A woman I recognized from our life, in that way cities throw the same faces at you until they configure into meaning. Her name was Noel. She designed light installations and wore confidence the way other people wore hats. She'd been at the opening, leaning close to Claire at the end of the night, laughter tipping over the edge of the bar like champagne. Now she crossed the lobby in a raincoat the color of nothing and stepped into the elevator without looking at the bar. I don't know why I stood. I don't know why I got in the next elevator and pressed 7. The hallway smelled like lemons and air conditioning. I found 708 and did not knock. The door opened on its own, a slow, private inch, and stopped. Someone had forgot to pull it closed until it clicked. Everything after that, how I chose to push gently, how the room opened itself like a mouth, is the part of the story I still pick up sometimes to see if it weighs the same. Noel stood at the window, her raincoat on a chair, a black slip skimming her like music. She turned when I stepped in and did not startle. "Oh," she said, as if she'd been waiting for one of 2 possible men and was prepared to talk either way. "You came." "What am I supposed to say to that?" I asked. She smiled, small and not unkind. "Maybe start with hello." "Hello," I said. "Noel." "Daniel." She tilted her head, assessing. "You look like a man who has started bringing umbrellas to places it never rains. You look like a woman who doesn't lock doors." She walked to the little table and poured water. "I like the risk," she said, handing me a glass. "It keeps the room honest." "Is Claire here?" I asked, because artful conversation had begun to feel like an alibi. "She isn't," Noel said. "Not today." "She's been here." "She has," Noel said, neither proud nor apologetic. My chest did a neat trick. Rage tried to stand up and calm put a hand on its shoulder. "With Santiago?" I asked. The name tasted like tin. Noel's mouth made a shape that could have been pity. "Not with him." She did not say who. She didn't have to. There is a frequency people's names vibrate at when you've been ignoring them on purpose. Noel crossed to the bed and sat on the edge like she was teaching me where gravity lives. She crossed one leg over the other. The silk whispered. "Before you decide I'm the villain," she said, "let me try to be the narrator." "I don't need a story," I said. "I need to know whether my life is the thing I think it is." "Those are the same problem." She took a breath. "Claire and I became friends over light. We liked the way exhibitions make people look at their own faces. We started texting after midnight about everything that isn't on the invitation. We didn't plan the rest. It's not an excuse, it's a location." I hated how measured her words were. I hated how much I believed them. "Why here?" I asked. "Because it's neutral," she said. "Because it's beautiful enough to make the damage feel intentional. Because it has mirrors that tell the truth." "You chose 708, I said, thinking of the matchbook. She smiled faintly. "She did," she said. "Dates and numbers matter to Claire. I think she wanted it to feel like a code we could control." "You shouldn't have told me," I said. "You came to find out," she said. "You wanted to be wrong in a way that felt right or right in a way that felt survivable. You wanted a stage set where you could point to the furniture and say, 'Ah, that's my chair.'" "What do you want?" I asked. "I meant from me." Noel considered, then shrugged in a way that exposed the long line of her shoulder. It was not a seduction. It was a diagram. "I want people to do the brave thing once before they start negotiating. I want you to decide whether the marriage you had is the marriage you want, not the mirror of one. And I want you to know that if you stay, stay because you choose her again, not because you're afraid of being the man who leaves." Her words unclenched something I didn't know I was holding. My eyes found the bed, the window, the outline of my shoes on the carpet. When she came close enough that the air shifted, I felt that dangerous, human ache, warmth and want, and the relief of being seen by someone who wasn't supposed to be looking. She touched my tie, straightened it like she had the right. "We don't have to make a mistake to make a decision," she said, "but sometimes decisions need heat." Her mouth was right there, lush with the mint her water had borrowed. I could have tasted her and carried the flavor home like contraband. Instead, I stepped back, and the space between us filled with the kind of respect that feels like a bruise you'll be grateful for later. "Thank you," I said. "For not kissing me," she laughed. "You're welcome for coming up," she tipped her head. "You're also welcome." I left without looking in the mirror. The elevator was an absolution that didn't belong to me. Outside, the rain had decided to mean something. Claire was home when I returned, hair wet, an oversized sweater swallowing her hands. She looked younger in the soft light of our kitchen, like a student who didn't know yet what she'd be punished for. She opened her mouth to speak and then shut it, as if she'd heard the version of the conversation that ended with shouting and wanted a different song. "I went to the Orpheum," I said. She held my gaze. 708, she asked, so quietly I might have imagined it. I nodded. She sat, folded herself into the chair, and pressed her palms flat to the table like she was bracing against a wave. "I didn't set out to make you smaller," she said. "I set out to make a part of me bigger. It sounds worse when I say it out loud." "Worse is sometimes true," I said and took the chair across from her. "Was it love?" Claire closed her eyes. "It was a light I wanted to stand in," she said. "It made everything else look dim. Then the light moved and I realized I'd been holding my breath. "And now?" I asked. "Now I want oxygen," she said. "And I want you, not the version who doesn't ask questions." We talked the way people do when they remember what their voices are for. Not a trial, not a surrender. We uncovered a dozen small betrayals that had nothing to do with beds, times we had chosen convenience over curiosity, peace over closeness, the easy laugh over the hard laugh that breaks into something useful. I told her about Noel. I told her I hadn't kissed her and that I wanted to and that I knew wanting isn't a crime until it is. She reached for my hand. Her palm was cool, her fingers steady. "I'm not asking you to forget," she said. "I'm asking you to decide." We made rules that were less about punishment than about architecture. Clear calendars, phones face up after dinner, therapy, separately and together, because sometimes the kindest thing you can do for a house is bring in a structural engineer. We didn't pretend desire obeyed paperwork. We treated it like weather, something to plan around, not to blame. A week later, Claire invited me to a late-night install at the museum. The building was a quiet cathedral to things that outlived their makers. In the central hall, Noel's newest piece rose like a patient storm, strands of light woven into a kind of vertical river. Claire turned off the overheads, and the piece shifted from pretty to alive. We stood together, and our shoulders touched. It was the first time I understood the erotic as something more than bodies. It was a tension, disciplined and soft, pointed like a beam and warm like a hand. "Do you love me?" Claire asked, not coy, not dramatic, just checking the emergency exits. "I do," I said, "but I want you the way I did at the beginning." She nodded toward the light. "Then let's give ourselves something new to look at, not something old to reenact." We went home and learned each other slowly, like a second language taught without shame. We found new ways to touch that felt like listening. When we kissed, it wasn't frenzy. It was a vow written in skin. We stopped treating the bed like a stage and let it be a room with windows. I saw Noel twice more, always in public, always in the kind of daylight that makes people honest. Once she waved from across a cafe and didn't cross over. Once she stopped to say hi at a fundraiser and said, simply, "You look taller." Claire shook her hand and didn't flinch. The world did not collapse or need to be rebuilt. It just continued, which is its own miracle. We are not perfect, which is a boring thing to confess and the only one that matters. Sometimes I still check her face when she laughs at a message I can't see. Sometimes she looks at a piece of silk on a rack and puts it back with a smile that knows too much. But most nights, she falls asleep with her hand on my chest, and I lie there counting the average number of breaths in a minute and the specific number of reasons I'm still here. If you're waiting for the scandal, the scene that will make you text this story to a friend with a gasp, I'm afraid it's not coming. We had the opportunity to ruin ourselves with flair and decided on the slower, less photogenic thing instead. We told the truth and kept telling it. The intrigue that used to live in hotel rooms now lives in small, domestic risks. Questions asked when it would be easier to change the subject. A kiss given before coffee because it might land softer. An apology rehearsed in the mirror and delivered without hedges. Every so often, I think about the silk I found in the laundry basket, the one that started the puzzle. It's gone now, donated or kept somewhere I won't stumble over it. The memory of it has softened. I hold on to the texture, not the cut. Cool, smooth, a promise that could go wrong and didn't have to. When Claire walks past me in the morning in one of my shirts, hair messy, mouth bare, it feels like a better kind of silk, earned, wrinkled by use, honest about the body underneath. If there's a moral, it's small enough to fit in a pocket. Don't make a habit of reading matchbooks, but don't be afraid to open the door you're most afraid of. Sometimes there's a stranger there with a glass of water and the courage you should have brought yourself. Sometimes there's nobody at all, just a mirror and the man you need to decide to be.